refused to pay for the wedding of my entitled sister after my parents were unable to do so. My sister arrived at my door, but not before my entire family turned against me. I, 34M, am a software developer, and my income is significantly more than that of my family members. My dad owns the neighborhood hardware store, and my mother is a retired music educator. Additionally, I have a younger sister named Catherine, 30F, but we haven't spoken in the previous 5 years. She is a terrible person who is extremely spoilt and entitled, which is the main reason. From her early years, she has always been that way, and neither of my parents has taken any action to stop her from developing that trait. For a very long time, I put up with her, but 5 years ago, I was hosting Christmas dinner, and she brought her new partner. I intended to have a big party because I had just moved into a new flat, but Catherine, true to her nature, wrecked the whole affair by saying superfluous things like how tiny and outdated my place was, and that it wasn't even in a nice neighborhood. She would not stop gushing about her new beau, who was also living in a spacious home 10 times larger than my flat and was rather wealthy. I informed her that I couldn't take it any longer, and that, in contrast to her boyfriend, I had moved into this flat on my own, was paying the rent in full, and didn't need my parents' assistance. Something that neither her boyfriend nor my sister could independently affirm. I also told her that she could escort herself out of my house and never return if she had such high standards. Since everything was genuine, she and her boyfriend clearly took offense at that, and they departed. We haven't communicated since, and despite my parents' best efforts to start a conversation, I don't want anything to do with her. My parents were the only reason I had a relationship with her up until now, but I could no longer stand it. We haven't spoken for 5 years. I recently learned that she is getting engaged to her boyfriend, the same person she dated 5 years prior, and they will tie the knot in a few months. Not wanting to be surpassed by the groom's parents, my folks, like fools, insisted on paying for the wedding site and decor. They should have realized that their daughter had costly taste, and that it will be far beyond their means. Thus, I think it was a fairly dumb move on their side. Secondly, our family's finances were far less stable than the groom's parents, so there was no way they could have surpassed them. The wedding was only a few months away, and they had already committed, so I'm not even sure what they were thinking. My sister's wedding plans were much beyond their means, so naturally, my parents realized they wouldn't be able to pay for everything my sister was preparing. Although we had been getting along well for the past few years, I had to deny their request for a loan a few days ago, due to an incident that occurred years ago. I'm currently on Reddit asking if I made the right decision, because many of my relatives have informed me that I'm being petty, even though I don't think that's the case. My parents informed me that I was on my own as an 18-year-old, and that they would not be paying for my college tuition or any other expenditures when I was ready to graduate from high school and begin college. That surprised me a little, as my parents had always been extremely encouraging of me, so I thought that was unusual. However, they informed me that in those days, when they reached 18, they had to fend for themselves because their parents were too poor to support them as adults. They urged me to follow suit, as it seemed to have given them a strong sense of independence and resilience. Not even a penny had been saved for my sister and me. As my parents had done, they wanted us to work our way through college. I really didn't want to waste my time working while attending college because my course was difficult. I wasn't sure if I could maintain my marks that way. It's also not like college is inexpensive. Because of its high cost, no amount of labor would be adequate. I therefore proposed that perhaps we could get a student loan for me, but my parents did not agree. They even said it was offensive that I would even consider something like that when I proposed that we borrow money from some relatives and pay it back later. They claimed that borrowing money was against their core values, as it was so pitiful. I even recall having numerous arguments with them about this particular issue. But in the end, I managed to convince my grandparents to assist me in obtaining a student loan, which allowed me to pay for college. For this, I was quite angry with my parents at the time, but I also gradually felt sorry for them. That does not imply, however, that I completely forgot about it. Since my sister never attended college, she was never affected by this issue. She understood that she would simply inherit Dad's company in the future, or get married, and that's precisely what she's doing, so she didn't think she needed to worry herself with. So well done her. In any case, the main point is that I recall my parents' response when I suggested that we should have taken out a loan to pay for my college education. They refused, citing moral objections. Therefore, it should still be something they oppose, based on their core beliefs. They didn't give a damn about their values when it came to my education funding. But they forgot all of that when Catherine decided she wanted to get married and have a lavish wedding. Since they had given me a great deal of hardship in the past, I didn't think my sister's wedding was more essential than my college education. And I felt that it was very convenient for them. I also wasn't going to let this go. I doubt I would have this work or have been able to support them financially if I hadn't been able to finish my degree and obtain the kind of grades I achieved. I reminded them of what they had said to me about loans and borrowing money and how it went against their morals and other things when they came to me to seek for help. Everything they had said to me was jazz. They were a little taken aback because, even after all these years, I don't think they had anticipated that I would still remember everything, but I did, and I recalled it fairly well. They had nothing else to say to me when our conversation was over, so they simply left and returned home in silence. I had assumed that was the end of it. But then a number of relatives began getting in touch with me, telling me how much I had embarrassed them and how angry they were about the way I had treated them. After becoming extremely wealthy, my parents had reportedly been telling everyone that I had changed. It seemed that I was now trying to discredit them despite everything they had done for me. It was not, in my opinion, an accurate portrayal of what I had done. That was all. I had merely fought against something that I felt was unjust. I decided not to talk to my parents at all, since if they truly had an issue with what I had said, they ought to have addressed it with me straight away, rather than going behind my back and complaining to the rest of the family. I also kept quiet among the rest of the family, as I didn't know what else to say to them if they didn't get my point. In any case, I don't think I was required to help in any manner at all, since I wasn't even invited to my sister's wedding. I haven't spoken to my parents or anyone else in the family for the last few days. Considering that I don't believe I did anything improper, I've been quite pleased about it. However, my parents paid me another visit 2 days ago, and they were really furious this time. They informed me that they had not received an invitation to my sister's wedding, presumably as a result of me. Since I have no contact with Catherine, I'm not sure how I could even make something like that happen. But they told me that she went crazy at them and began pressuring them to find a way to pay for the wedding after they informed her that they wouldn't be able to fund it, and that she and her in-laws would be needed to help cover the cost of the things that they wouldn't be able to. Because she did not want her family to appear particularly awful if, at this point, she went to her in-laws to seek for financial assistance. She was kind of correct. My parents shouldn't have committed to anything in the first place if they weren't confident they could afford what they had promised. Although she is typically quite conceited and arrogant, I don't think what she said here was incorrect. Personally, I believe that since his family is wealthy, she and her fiancé ought to have split the expense between them. However, my parents ought to follow through on their commitments if they have made any, and she is correct when she says that they made her seem awful in front of her in-laws, though she was justified in being alarmed. I also mentioned this to my parents. Additionally, I informed him that as I hadn't instructed them to commit to anything of the such, I had nothing to do with this. They just had themselves to blame, as they had caused this to happen. I would argue that my sister's decision to completely exclude them from the wedding was a bit excessive at this point. But what did they expect from Catherine? She has always been this way, and it is not my fault. It is their fault. But my folks were just not ready to hear it, and they insisted that they wouldn't be in this situation now. I had just been kind to them and given them a loan, instead of being so petty and fostering old grievances. I told them to go since I felt it was really unjust of them to put the burden on me, and they complied. However, they persisted in their criticism of me, to the point where the entire family is now against me and calling me a callous and self-centered individual. Though my parents can't afford it, I refuse to help with my sister's wedding, even though I don't think I've done anything wrong. Hello. So I've made the decision to stop communicating with my whole family. It's crazy that, with the exception of my grandparents, my parents and my mother's families are currently unified against me. My mom's parents are obviously no longer with us, but my dad's parents are on my side and have done a good job of keeping the family harmonious thus far. However, even they are growing weary of the drama. Although there have always been disagreements within the family, I believe that my hatred has brought them all closer. If nothing else, I'm relieved that I could provide for the family. I really don't want any drama right now. I've blocked them all as of right now. Someone in the comments made the suggestion that they might actually be jealous of me, which is why they all seem to detest me so much and require an excuse to oppose me. That is, in my opinion, a really good point. Not to blow my own trumpet, but I think my family won't be able to handle how much better I am doing than the majority of them. Growing up, I never really listened to advice, and most of them advised me that instead of spending all of my time on computers, I should just get a business degree and take over my dad's store. And what do you know? I currently earn my life in this manner. Additionally, the majority of my cousins are not just envious of me, but also seem to harbor animosity towards me due to the fact that I am far more successful than they are. Families should celebrate one another's accomplishments and spread that happiness, but that has never happened, and it just makes me sad sometimes. It just doesn't even make sense to me. I can't help it though. Some folks are just that way. My parents claim that I am the one who invited them to my sister's wedding without their invitation. Therefore, I'm prepared to wager that they are already taking pleasure in the fact that everyone is against me at this point. Since their previous visit, we have not communicated. I'm still not sure why they think I ruined their relationship with my sister. However, my grandparents have informed me that they are also not communicating with them. Since my grandparents are on my side in this situation, it only serves to highlight how unappreciative individuals can be, because my grandparents had assisted them so frequently in the past, even though they don't seem to recall it. It is very fortunate for me that I did not assist them when they came to me, since I am confident that they would have conveniently forgotten about it in the future. They should learn a lesson from someone, even if it has to be someone as horrible as Catherine, because they take everything for granted. Hello. Yesterday was a very funny day. I couldn't discuss it here since I was so busy, but after I got home from work, Catherine came to see me. I believe I previously indicated that we don't get along and haven't spoken to each other in the last 5 years, but I was shocked when she showed up at my place an hour later. Since our parents aren't even invited to the wedding, I'm very sure she's here to discuss it with me because she wants money. However, she was astute enough not to begin with that. Rather, she informed me that her purpose for being here was to express her regret for all of her previous actions. She informed me that in order to make up for her previous behavior, she wanted to publicly issue an invitation to me before anybody else, as she was about to embark on a new chapter in her life and be married. She said she truly regretted being a brat, but our parents also never informed her about her behavior, so it wasn't all her responsibility. She so grew up thinking that her behavior was appropriate and typical in society. But now that she was much older, she realized what a horrible person she had been, and she was attempting to make apologies to all of the people she had offended in the past. Since I was her brother and had to put up with her the most, she believed that I was the best person to start with. After allowing her to finish her brief statement, I informed her that I was okay with it and that I was glad she had at last realized her mistake and apologized. However, I was aware that there was still more to come, and I was patiently waiting. She proceeded to inform me, of course, that she had heard from the other relatives what they had been saying about me, so she knew that our parents had also treated me horribly. That, simply by declining to help with her wedding, I had shown myself to be petty, cruel, and self-centered. She made an attempt to soft-pedal and claimed that I was entirely correct in what I had stated, because, in the end, they had never assisted me once I became 18, and they had promised to help her with the wedding expenses. Therefore, I had no obligation to help them out when they got into problems, especially because our connection was not good to begin with. I was just waiting for her to arrive to the awareness that she was building towards something. She eventually revealed to me, after I remained silent for some time, that our parents had taken the money they had been promising her for so long, now that they were not invited. They were the ones who had promised to pay for at least some of the costs, so she began to rant about how unjust it was. She was now too ashamed to tell her fiancé that following her altercation with our parents, they would no longer provide any coverage, and that his parents would be responsible for paying for everything. She came to ask me if I would be willing to assist her in this situation just once, so that she would have my gratitude for the rest of her life. She went so far as to say that she would even sign a contract or do whatever it takes to guarantee that I would receive the money back from her, ideally by the end of the year. But for now, she only wanted my assistance so that I could save her the shame having to tell her fiancé about this whole situation. She agreed to give me the money back, and since it would make it more official, she was even ready to get paperwork involved, which I found to be interesting. However, even though she has apologized, our relationship is still quite strained and we are not exactly on good terms, so I informed her that I needed more time to consider things through. I assumed she would understand, but she was rather frank about the fact that I was behaving too expensive, and that, as my sister, she wasn't asking for much. That was quite the compliment coming from her, considering that we haven't even been close as brothers for the past 5 years. I realized that I was aware from the start that her only purpose for being here was to make a money request. I informed her that she was much like our parents, selfish and constantly thinking about herself, and that she didn't genuinely mean her apology. She obviously became enraged with me after that and started yelling at me, but I'm not my parents. I told her to leave my house right away since I could not stand for that kind of behavior and had no reason to put up with it. She kept shouting she would call the police on me for attacking her, but I don't care. At first, she wouldn't go, so I grabbed her by the arm and made her leave. After a while, she left and I was quite upset about it, but now I simply find this to be a ridiculously humorous story, so I'm not going to let it bother me. It has been a few weeks since my last post, and I had thought that my sister had withdrawn the offer because we were still at odds. Though I wasn't sure how to interpret it, I was pleasantly surprised to receive an invitation to her wedding today. I decided to get in touch with her since I was feeling strange. She didn't answer me right away, but after a few hours, she gave me a call. When I called to thank her for the invitation, she was a little stern with me, so I decided to find out what was going on, because I was a little perplexed. She informed me that she had truly intended to be a better person that day, and that she had meant her apologies. She also wanted me to know that she wasn't just putting on an act to win my favor because I was wealthy, even though she had already made the financial arrangements herself and didn't need anyone else's assistance anymore. She had said that day with complete sincerity. She also told me that she was genuinely trying very hard not to become another brat at this point, because our parents had made her realize what a brat she had been in the past. I then asked her if she would like to extend an invitation to them as well, and she informed me that she had never really declined an invitation, contrary to what they were saying to others. She claimed that they had placed her in a really challenging situation, and that she was simply really irate with them. It didn't seem like my sister's parents didn't know what she wanted for her wedding. In fact, she had told them up front that it would be expensive, and that she didn't think they would have enough money for it all, but they were fairly certain about it. It would therefore be very embarrassing for her to inform her in-laws that her parents were just talking big talk and couldn't really afford what they had promised after talking so much. What truly irritated her was that they hadn't even stopped to consider things and were so determined to make an extra effort to outdo her in-laws. They also decided that she did not want them at her wedding any longer and uninvited themselves because she had been yelling at them. They had deduced that on their own, even though she hadn't explicitly stated it to them or even hinted at it. They had done precisely what they were doing to me. They chose to discuss it with everyone else rather than facing her and having a conversation with her. To be honest, I think it's really crazy that they tell everyone their kids are so bad, when they themselves don't even make an effort to talk to us when they have the chance. We won't be particularly willing to work things out with them after they have spoken such awful things about us to everyone else. Worse, and even for that, they will find a way to place the responsibility on us. I'm happy that my sister can now finally recognize that they simply want to play the victim all the time. Although Catherine claims that the rest of her family hasn't shunned her in the same way that they have me, she is still debating whether or not to extend an invitation to them, because it appears that they are leaning towards supporting my parents. They were really hostile to me, though, and instead of directly accusing her of anything, most of them were still attempting to justify why my parents were correct. My parents are too proud to accept responsibility for their actions, but they are also not too proud to depend on their children for their own needs in the future, which may be a contributing factor. They are keeping that door open because, with my grandparents no longer being able to assist them, they at least need Catherine on their side. However, that's just my theory. I'm not positive what's happening in reality. Although it's upsetting, I am aware that Catherine is being treated quite differently from how I was, and this is nothing new to me. I suppose I'm going to give Catherine a chance if she is truly attempting to improve herself, as at least she is starting to understand the reality now. She apologized for having a tantrum the other day as well, and after we chatted on the phone, she said she would really like having me at the wedding, because at least one member of the family should be present. My decision to attend or not has not yet been decided, but I plan to give it some thought and let her know in a few days. Although it's difficult to mend a relationship you haven't given any consideration to in 5 years, I also don't want to be the type of person who is constantly harboring resentment and never lets things go. That will make me very unhappy. My grandparents have informed me that they will also be there if I choose to go once we have spoken about it. They hadn't decided whether or not to go before, but in light of the current situation, they might want to, because it appears that Catherine is reconsidering her connection, the rest of the family, and may decide not to invite them. Alright, so I went to Catherine's wedding yesterday. Attending would be deceptive, you people. In fact, I led her all the way down the aisle. Sadly, our parents did not even contact her prior to the wedding or offer an apology, which is why they were not invited. He reached out to me asking if I would be willing to walk her down the aisle, because she really wanted someone to be there for her, as emotional support, because she had been unhappy about it for a few days prior to the wedding. I agreed right away, since no one should ever be treated this way, especially by their own parents over a small, pointless quarrel, regardless of the history. My sister had always been the golden child, though I always knew it would be much easier for my parents to emotionally distance themselves from me. But to see this side of them, realize that they were too egotistical and proud to even try to mend their relationship with the only child that had ever meant anything to them, that was just low. They contribute to the fact that my sister used to be a horrible person. The reason behind it is that no one had ever tried to correct her. It should have been their duty as parents, but they never appeared to care about how she was acting and always seemed to think it would be best to just leave her alone, which ultimately caused her to become a spoilt brat. While they could have taken action to prevent it, they chose not to, so I'm not claiming it's all their fault. In any case, I accepted Catherine's request to accompany her down the aisle, and she appeared to be grateful for everything, as even a few of her family members who she had invited to the wedding had turned her down. I suppose everyone wants to be involved in the drama and cheer for my parents. She apologized to all of us prior to the wedding, though, and I managed to get my grandparents to come. Her fiancé also expressed regret to me for our unpleasant behavior years ago. Catherine informed me that she had told her fiancé the whole truth about her parents' predicament, and he had assured her not to worry about the money, because he would take care of everything. That's how things transpired for them then. Because our parents wouldn't be present for the ceremony, she was on the verge of tears before it started. But I, her fiancé, and our grandparents encouraged her not to let them spoil such a memorable day. It's not that everything is perfect right now, but we will work on it and strive to improve things going forward. I genuinely think she was sincere when she said she wanted to start again when I met her yesterday, and I'm truly open to the possibility that she has evolved as a person. Thus, while many may disagree with my choice, I believe it to be the right one.